We are here today with Megan Moore, the Democratic candidate for District 15 on the Sangamon County Board. We appreciate you meeting with us and invite you to start by giving the voters an idea of why you are running for this office and why you feel you're the best candidate.
Sure. Well, I thought I'd start out by just telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a longtime resident of Sangamon County. I actually grew up here and was away just for a little while to go to school. I graduated from Springfield High School. And I'm married for 23 years to my husband, Sean. He is the CEO of a food service business here in town. I have 3 children, 2 daughters, Cameron and Madeline, and a son, Ian, all of whom attended school in Sangamon County. My parents and my in-laws all live here, and recently we moved my 91-year-old grandmother here to Springfield as well. So I'm very much invested in the community. It's an important part of my life, both growing up and also now as an adult here raising my family. I attended Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, where I have a bachelor's degree in English. And I attended Vermont Law School, it's where I got my JD, and I came back to Illinois, took the Illinois bar, and I maintain an active license as an attorney here. Professionally, I was a staff attorney at the Legislative Reference Bureau, where I drafted legislation in local government, among other areas. I'm now the part of the senior management team of a small nonprofit organization that provides continuing legal education for attorneys. And why I'm running, I think the residents of District 15 deserve a choice in this election, and not just a choice in the candidate, but also a choice in approach to the issues. County board members, in my view, should be active participants and engaging their constituents and not just waiting for the issues to arise, but actually talking with them in advance about what the issues are and bringing their voice to the county board and to the county government. So that's why I'm running, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay, good. Thanks. Welcome. Before we dive into the issues, I'd just like to step back. And so how is it you came to be a Democrat?
Well, I think that the Democratic Party certainly aligns best with my values. And my values have to do with, and I talked about this at the recent candidate forum, I look for, to me, strength, the best kind of strength comes from kindness and compassion and in working together to find solutions. And I see that in the Democratic Party. I see more of a positive message. And so that's why I'm a Democrat. I believe in working together as a community to find solutions and find common ground. And I see that reflected more in the Democratic Party. So that's why I'm a Democrat.
Okay. And of those, can you identify, or maybe you already have, a couple of principles that Democrats generally hold, and how would they be reflected in your work on the county board?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think one of the principles that Democrats typically hold is embracing diversity. And I think that is crucial on the county board. You know, it's crucial for any community to be successful and to grow, but it's certainly important to have representatives on the county board that understand the diversity of the community. My particular district, as we were talking before, is a fairly diverse district. We have students, we have a large population of retired people, we have young professionals like me, and so really all of those different backgrounds that come together and coalesce, I think that's a principle that's important to me, is trying to find the common ground among those communities.
Good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So if you're elected, what would be your top priority and how would you champion it?
Sure. Well, my top priority, I think, would be economic development. You know, there have been some recent efforts, and I'm very excited about those. The new Lincoln Land Economic Development Council, I think, is an important step forward. I've read the report that sort of, you know, that was the result of that report. And one of the things that really struck me in that report was that it's time in Sangamon County for transformational change. It's time to think big and think outside the box. And I think we need new leadership to do that. And that is something that I would absolutely champion. We certainly face challenges in regard to economic development, but I would like us to start viewing those challenges as opportunities to learn and grow and not be sort of I guess, adhere to the status quo. It's time to think differently, and so that would be an important issue for me.
So what type of transformational change do you think, or would you like to see come to the county?
Well, I think it's very promising to see efforts. For example, in Springfield, we have the Innovate Springfield, and thinking more in terms of you've got the big picture issues, but you've also got small business, and the development of small business and entrepreneurship, I think, is going to be crucial. I think those businesses need to have a voice in this process, and one of the things that I would like to work with the EDC to develop is to ensure that happens, that as they're considering these, their work, that those voices are being heard. So I think that would be something I would particularly like to see, and I'd like to see some diversity across the board on how we develop economically within the county, both regionally, within communities, racially, gender. I think all those things need to be considered. In Sangamon County, I think 52% of Sangamon County residents are women, and I think we need to think about how to involve them in the economic development process.
Over the years, there's been some tension between the city and the county, and each kind of wanting to do its own thing, go its own way. What's your sense of that? How would you work with them?
Well, I think that there's a natural tension there because we're existing in the same space. And I think that it's going to take a lot of conversation and thinking about the ways that we can work together effectively and focusing on those things. I'm not sure what all of those things are, and that's going to take a lot of communication and conversation, but I certainly think that the city has certain unique strengths and the county has certain unique strengths, and we need to think about how those come together, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in workforce development. There are ways that we can do that, but it does involve a conversation, and we have to let go of some of the, any past, feelings about, sort of the tension.
Okay. What type of technological efficiencies or changes would you like to see the county implement?
Well, one of the things, and this is a small thing that I noticed, is that even just the websites for some of the county departments really do need to be, I think, improved. And I don't think that's, that's something that is a project that can be worked on in talking with constituents about what they really want. I think a good example of that is I went to the Department of Public Health website, and it's such a great resource for the county, and I'd like to see more options for communication within that website. There's a very important effort, the Opium Task Force, and so I went to that website, and they have a great listing of resources that people can use if they need help in that area. But I'd like to see more on there about what they're doing and their engagement with the community. And so I think, in terms of just sort of communication, I think there could be some efficiencies and improvements. I'm sure there are other things as well, but that to me is sort of a top of the line thing because it's how you're communicating with the community.
For websites, do you mean like ease of navigation or intuitiveness of how it works?
Well, all of that, but I think also just providing information and talking with people about what might be helpful for them to get access to the resources. That's a process that governments and businesses struggle with, but I think it needs to be important.
More and more local governments have, like the state, struggled with financial matters on some things. As a member, if you were to become a member of the county board, how would you ensure that the county's run in a fiscally efficient manner? What would be your approach?
Well, I think we have to think about a couple of things. First of all, we have to always be mindful of how we're using taxpayer dollars. We have this Economic Development Council, and my understanding is that the county has contributed about $500,000 in its first year to its creation and work. And so to me, that requires some oversight by the county board to ensure that the efforts are in line with what the report recommended and what the community really needs. So I would definitely be a voice and involved in questioning, and working to find out how that money is being used and measuring the effort. I think that's the other thing that sometimes gets lost. We have a lot of great ideas and we maybe put money towards those efforts, but we also have to measure them, and we have to be willing to make changes if the measurements show that, it's not a good return on investment.
For since you brought up the EDC example, how would you measure successful efforts with the EDC?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy, and I think we have to give them some room to get started. And so I think over time, it's about developing conversations with them about, okay, what benchmarks can we set, and how can we I think we can refer back to that report and say, these are the things that we were trying to do. What are some concrete measurements that we can put in place that are truly measurable? I think one of the ways we're going to see ultimately, and this is a long-term measurement, that it's successful or not, is whether the population decline continues. I'm right in the middle of that group that is the biggest decline in Sangamon County. I think it's between 30 and 55 or something like that. In the past 10 years, it's dropped like 8.5%. I think that's tragic because I think this is a great community. And so I would like to see, as a long-term measurement, that we see population growth with young professionals and with anyone in that age group. I think that's an economic engine. Those are people who are at a certain point in their careers or their work life where they're going to be contributing to the community in a variety of different ways. So that would be something that I think it's hard to say concretely what those measurements should be right now because they're just getting started. But I think the report gives us a good place to start.
Okay. Talking about finances, one of the ways the county gets money is taxes.
Sure.
Would you promote or suggest any changes to the way the existing tax system for the county?
Not right off the bat. I feel like that's something where certainly I want to dive in and do a more in-depth assessment before making any suggestions for changes. But I think everybody in Sangamon County would agree we're sufficiently taxed, and that, again, it's about transparency, it's about communication, because people need to understand what it is they're getting for their tax dollars. And I don't see that when I'm out talking to people, even in the course of this campaign, that they understand the role of the county government in their lives, and it's huge. I mean, anybody who has had a parking ticket, or not a parking ticket, a traffic ticket, has encountered county government. So, above and beyond property taxes, it has a daily impact, but that property tax fuels the work of the county, and we as citizens should expect something in return, and we should be accountable for that.
You brought up transparency. Do you think the county is transparent at the moment, county government?
I think that there's always room for improvement in transparency. I think that if I had a say in it, I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more accountability and transparency built into the operation of the EDC, for example. But that is something that we can still do. And so, I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with it, but I think it's something that's important. And again, I keep coming back to communication. I think people need to understand what's going on.
Speaking of communication, so if you were elected, how would you make yourself available to your constituents?
Certainly throughout the campaign, one of the things I've done is I've created a Facebook page. I also realize that not everyone is on Facebook, and not everybody enjoys that type of communication. So one of the things that I have thought about doing is doing a regular newsletter communication, email and in the mail, that would apprise people of what's happening in the county, what's kind of coming up in terms of the agenda, and asking them for feedback and input on the issues. I would also like to take some opportunities to just meet in person with people and find out what they're concerned about. I think that it's important, too, that people understand not just the issues within their specific district, but also in all of the county, because we're not living in a bubble here. We all are impacted. And so I would make sure that they're aware of those things, too.
One of the things the county board does is hear zoning requests. Do you think any changes need to be made And how would you approach zoning questions that you're going to be asked to weigh in on?
You mean from constituents within my district? Well, in terms of dealing with constituent questions, I think the first thing is to listen and find out what the issues are that they're really concerned about. Sometimes they may think it's a zoning issue, but it might not actually be, and there might be a way to solve the problem without having to go through that process. I do think that we have to be careful. Zoning is certainly there for a reason. It's a structure that is in place to protect the community, so we have to be thoughtful of that, and I think we need to, consider and really listen also to the county staff that have that provide opinions on those matters. In terms of things to change, I'm not really at this point sure what I would change about it, but I certainly would be open to anything that was a suggestion to make the process more, open and certainly not easier for people, but I think easier to understand.
Also on the November ballot will be a non-binding referendum that asks voters if they want the county to absorb Capital Township.
Okay.
There are plans by the city to put a similar measure on the spring ballot, but saying the city should absorb the township. So do you support consolidation? And if so, with which entity?
I think it's a difficult question because certainly there probably are some duplication of services. My concern is mainly for the constituents that are within the township and making sure that they are represented appropriately. I'm not sure that it makes sense for the county to have countywide officials making decisions that affect those folks. In some ways it may make more sense if there is to be a consolidation for it to be with the city, but I'm learning more about that issue. But that's my current thoughts.
Over the years, public health, for example, and I think there are a couple of others that have been consolidated. Mm-hmm. Are there others that you've heard about or wonder about the possibility of consolidation?
Not necessarily. Again, I think you have to take each thing on a case-by-case basis. So, if it does make sense, if it's a countywide service and it makes sense to deliver on a countywide basis, I think that it's worth the conversation. But I don't think that we should do something that affects a tiny area where decision makers are representing a much larger area. So I think that we need to try to make sure that the constituents in that area are best protected.
Okay. What part of county government would receive more attention if you were elected to this office?
Well, I think that one thing that I care a lot about, and partly this is because of the work that I do, is workforce education. I would absolutely like to see, I'd like to learn more about the county's efforts in that area and get more involved in that. I think it's important. We one of the, I think it was UIS and the Chamber did a economic survey, I think it was in 2017, and one of the key issues was, finding employees. And I think that with workforce training, we can help that issue because sometimes those employees are needed to do a specific task. And if we can coordinate with employers and the colleges that are in my district and really work on developing some workforce opportunities for people, I think that would be a great thing.
Is there a particular area you think the county could help in, or
particular area
of workforce development, like a particular program you've seen somewhere else, or?
I don't have anything specific in mind. I think, okay. We have especially in this district, we have a lot of resources in that regard. And so I think we have to listen to what the community wants and needs. I don't think I should prescribe that.
Okay. Is there an issue that you are passionate about that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
I am very much interested in renewable energy and that being a part of our economic development plan. I was very very pleased to see that the county moved forward with the process of for the two solar farm groups. I know there's more to that. That's not the end of the story. There's state funding that has to be acquired, et cetera. But I think that's an example of something new and different and innovative that we can do in the county. There are certainly jobs and training that are attached to that that could be a great force for economic growth. And so that's something I particularly care about.
Okay.
I just wondered, so do you have other political ambitions beyond the county board?
No, this is my first time running for office. No, I do not at this point have any any other political ambitions. I really am interested in serving the community, and I think that I bring some very important skills to the effort. I think I bring some knowledge, and I'm really excited. I think we're at a pivotal point in Sangamon County right now, and I think we need fresh leadership. I think we need new ideas, and I think the important thing is to listen and not prescribe what the county needs. And I think if you read that report, that's exactly what they're saying. Let's listen to each other, and let's get started and get to work and get things done.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we thank you for meeting with us today, Megan, and we invite you to give a brief closing statement as to why voters in this district should elect you to the county board.
Well, as I mentioned in my opening, I really am invested in this community. When I graduated from law school, I certainly didn't have to come back here, but this is where I wanted to be. This is the community I grew up in. I care about it, and I'm concerned about it as well. And I see so many opportunities, and those opportunities, as I mentioned before, arise out of challenges. And I think that's an important way to frame it. I think that I can, as your representative on the county board, bring a completely different mindset. I think this needs to be about I think that I will be an active member of the board and actively engaging with constituents and talking with you, and that's why I think I am the best candidate for this position.